Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to be with you today to present Decentering the Center Global South Voices Taking the Lead. We're happy to have you here with IASIS and the Global Consortium Initiative. Just want to draw to your attention quite quickly if you are interested in setting up the Zoom so that you can have this morning's discussion translated into your own language. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you can click on the icon that says Show Captions and then slide the button next to translation. If you hover over my speaking language, you can select the language available to you there. This is a great option for you if you'd like to have things translated. I want to take just a moment to introduce our speakers today. I'm quite excited to have these wonderful individuals from across the Global South with us. We have Eve Bamutimi. She is a scholar practitioner who serves as program director of student life at Yale University. Najla Al-Shaheri is currently serving in a temporary faculty role at Princess Noor bint Abdul Rahman University in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Bazed Islam is a lecturer in educational leadership and school improvement at Brock Institute of Educational Development at Brock University. Patrick Oloko is a visiting professor with the Council on African Studies at the Whitney and Betty Macmillan Center for International and Area Studies at Yale University. Paulina Latorra is a scholar practitioner in internationalization of higher education who serves as director of international relations at Universidad Católica del Norte, Chile. And Marlon Maglapas is a doctoral student at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and has served as director of student activities and development. He has been instrumental as well in the creation of the Certified Organization Advisors of the Philippines. Today's programming is brought to you all from IASIS, it's, International Association of Student Affairs and Services. They serve as a global advocate for students engaged in higher ed, student affairs and services, and the profession itself. They're here to provide and encourage enhanced communications and support for members by sharing good practices, facilitating internships and exchanges, organizing conferences and workshops, much like we're doing today with our webinar, and then, of course, supporting our global community. If you're not familiar with IASIS and you would like to learn more, we welcome you to check out our website where you can learn about the work that we do. And my name is Marianne, and I am just going to be hosting us for the introduction. But at this time, I would like to turn us over to Eve, who is going to be moderating. Whoops, my screen did not do what it was supposed to do. I apologize. Now you've all read my email. I'm going to turn this over to Eve and let her take over for today and to work with our great guest. Eve,
Thank you
it's
so
all
much,
yours.
Marianne. And what is technology if it doesn't do something that you don't expect, right? But good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone, wherever you are. I know that we have people joining us from across the world today, so it is very nice to have you all here. And apologies for my voice. This is what I have, and this is what I'm working with. I hope that you are able to hear me, but unfortunately, I've been dealing with some cold and allergy, so please pardon me. But thank you once again for joining us for this very important conversation on decentering, the global South in research. This discussion is a continuation of our previous session on power, positionality, and access to research, which was hosted by ISIS last week. And I will actually post the link here for anyone who may be interested um, in viewing that conversation. Excuse me. So today we're inviting us to critically examine how knowledge is produced, right? Whose voices are being amplified and how power operates within global research ecosystems. Goal for today's conversation is not to only name some of these challenges, but also to imagine more equitable and inclusive approaches to research and collaboration between, the two hemisphere that, that we're talking about. So just to sort of acquaint, our audience, the format for today's conversation will be me posing questions to our panelists, and they have about 45 seconds to 1 minute to answer each question as they deem fit. We encourage the audience to use the chat feature or the question and answer feature to post questions, share your thoughts, as our panelists are sharing their thoughts and expertise. At the end, the panelists will have time and opportunity to answer your questions. So, as we've shared, today's panelists represent many global South regions, and we're eager to hear their professional expertise. So let's jump right in. Um, but before I ask my first question, I want to sort of ground us in the complexity and the importance of the conversation that we're having today, because we live in a time where rather than, physical labor, we're beginning to see more human, knowledge cultivating and transforming, knowledge economy, which has become a major catalyst, right, for economic growth by developing intellectual capacity, so, right, technology, skills development, and innovation, among other things. It is from this awareness and reality, right, of our time and, the 21st century that I pose my first question, and honestly, my subsequent questions, right? So, to the panelists, can you tell us how you, in your work, define Global South? And what challenges, tensions, or limitations, if any, have you experienced with that label? Hmm.
I can start maybe. Okay. So I see personally the Global South not simply as a geographical or developmental category, but I see it as a reflection of historical inequalities in terms of power, colonial legacies, or uneven distribution of the resources, and also from the academic lens, maybe unequal access to academic visibility. So this is one thing. And at the same time, I would also like to recognize the fact that the term Global South has some limitations because my experience as a Global South scholar from Bangladesh, I believe it is not identical from other Global South nations scholars. So in my work, I actually use the term very much carefully as a political or structural category rather than a mere fixed geographical identity or location. So that's what I see and use Global South in my work.
Thank you. Malon?
Hello, Eve, and hello, everyone. Good evening from the Philippines. I believe for the Philippines, for us to understand when we talk about Global South, it's really about the history. The Philippines has been colonized by major colonizers, and for the last 500 years, we were able to be more dependent on the culture. I think when we talk about the context of the Philippines, it refers to countries like us in terms of histories of colonizations. We became economic dependent with all these colonizers. And unfortunately, until now, we feel the evidence of unequal participation in the global knowledge production. I know this kind of label can be oversimplify diverse realities, and somehow there is some unintentionally frame southern countries only through deficit narratives rather than innovation and expertise. Because global south, a country like the Philippines, can definitely contribute to global knowledge. That's for me, Eve. Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I would like to continue with that, with what my colleagues have said. When I think about, or when I pose myself from the Global South, I'm not only looking at it as a geographical construct, but I'm looking more at the margins, so those voices that have been silenced. There is a lot of literature, specifically from Latin American scholars, that try to refer to this coloniality and trying to look at different epistemologies that are in the margins. And that's how I like to think about it when we talk about the Global South. So decentering those voices that have normally been silenced in a way. Now, there are obviously limitations because when we talk about the Global South, again, we're talking about a bloc. So we're not referring, and this also happens when we talk about, for example, Latin America. We talk about it as a bloc, and we're not looking at the different identities, realities, and aspects that appear within these territories. So I think that is one of the major limitations, again, that we tend to reproduce again these like generalization of an area, of a geographical area with specific characteristics. And then again, there's another risk, which I think it's about a little bit about romanticizing what it is to be from the Global South. So it kind of has become a trend in a way, and it tends to kind of romanticize that the Global South is different and that it has all of these identities and that it has to look at its roots. And sometimes we tend to forget like all of these different debates and aspects that are connected to the Global South.
Thank you. Najla.
Hey again.
Oh, no. Najla, we're having a hard time hearing you. You're going in and out.
Can I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. I think it's not a summary as such, but I think all the definitions so far are quite very insightful. So for me, in that division, Global South and Global North, is something we view individually. And of course, in political geography, it just simply divides the world into two. And the only logic for that division seems to be resource allocation. That's it. So the Global North is believed to have resources, while the Global South lacks resources. So what has happened is that we have converted the terms into fields of resistance, especially those of us in the Global South. So in the Global South, we protest over our lack of resources and then demand that the Global North shares theirs with us. I think that's precisely what Marlon was trying to say. Good. So we use it as a terminology of resistance, so they should share it with us, and that kind of thing. And that's the way it has been. And this sharing has always taken care of the historical wrongs that we have all alluded to here. But I think something very crucial that we should also understand is this, which I have noticed quite recently, is that the resistance has turned full circle. It seems that our resistance from the global south end has come to an end. And it is now the global north that is resisting and insisting that they have done enough. And this is evident in the border closures that we see everywhere, announced everywhere. The drawback on aid, that has led to the closure of USAID and all other such things that you hear. And of course, so we have perhaps reached the point of equilibrium when these terms, global north and global south, will have to have new meanings or no meanings. I think we have reached that point where perhaps we can begin to talk about a decentered notion of global south and global north. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Najla, we were having a hard time
Yes.
hearing you earlier, so maybe we
Yeah,
try
I'm sorry
again.
for that. I'm not
No
a friend
worries
with
at
the
all.
technical things. So just to sum up what my colleague said, that what I'm seeing in a global as in my opinion, a global south. So as a Saudi scholar trained in US and working in health education and health promotion and qualitative research. this topic, like I see this topic through both personal and professional experience. So I use this term carefully because it's not only geographic, label. It's describe a structural and position and the global research system. It reflects who has more, let's say, control over funding, publication standards, citation network, the language, what becomes visible as a credible knowledge. So the limitation is that term can flatten very different countries into one category. So, Saudi Arabia, for example, they invest a lot or heavily, like it's not a resource poor setting, but it's investing strongly research and health transformation, innovation, and clinical research by technology. So I use this term mainly to discuss like a power, visibility, and whose knowledge is, let's say, treated as central or peripheral.
Thank you so much. So just to sort of paraphrase what I've heard, so far, I've heard that perhaps the terminology global south is quite limiting, right? It's typically been viewed from a geographical standpoint, right? Um, while um, while neglecting the nuances within, right, this vast region. I'm also hearing, that we've had issues where coloniality has sort of, amplified the difficulties when it comes to resource allocation. However, on the same, in the same token, the global north is also sort of pushing back, right, in saying, perhaps we've done more than we need to do, right? When it comes to amplifying the resources that are required for, for advancement in the global south. So those are some of the things that I'm hearing and much more, right, that you all have sort of indicated. And my next question to you then would be that given the very limiting understanding and definition, right, of the popular definition of global south, right, where we've had this geographical divide, are there moments where those labels have been limiting or problematic for you, for your work, and if so, how?
Okay. Should I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, of course, as we have all said, it's very limiting, not in terms of the terminologies themselves, but of course, in terms of what we have all agreed here. And the first limitation, of course, is the disparity of resources. Research in the global north is very well funded, as we always find out when we have the opportunity to visit. And knowledge production here is very well respected. Here, somehow in the global north, the lead is often seen in the way that knowledge translates into practical things. For example, uh, you see the way iPhones and all the others modernize their thing and then key in into the capitalist system. But in the global south, particularly in Africa where I come from, this is not always the case, the kind of thing. So we have to depend on the global north for knowledge production and such other things. So there we're basically stuck with a colonial model of education, where you just simply produce graduates for clerical employment. So, and this shows up in the way that we address issues in research. We have data, especially those of us in the humanities. We have enough data, but we lack the capacity to properly conceptualize this data and make them useful to humanity. That's the way I see it.
Thank you so much. Paulina?
Yes, I think I mentioned some limitations before, but I would like to focus specifically on two. One is this deficit discourse that we have when we talk about the global south, that sometimes sees things from mainly from limitations and not from the richness and
Mm,
uniqueness
mm,
of each of the
yeah.
of the territories that compose the global south. I think that that is one of the major limitations that we have, because when you want to focus your research as well on literature, what you encounter is mainly research done from this deficit discourse.
Mhm.
And also another aspect would be visibility. I think specifically because of how knowledge production is mainly dominated as well from the global
Mhm.
north. And I've encountered several scholars in Latin American universities that do not speak English and therefore do not write in English language, and therefore their excellent publications are never see other territories that are not Spanish speaking. And another group that actually does not write in English as a way of resistance. So I think that those two major aspects would be the biggest limitations that we actually encounter
Yeah,
when we talk about or when we position ourselves from the global south.
yeah. Thank you so much, Paulina. Marlon?
Yes, based from what Patrick and Paulina have shared, I think I'll be speaking in the field of student affairs and services.
Mhm.
We were always labeled in terms of we are weak in terms of how we do research. And I believe this is also a call for IASAs. I believe this is a great opportunity to really say that the global south can really produce excellent research, but unfortunately, we are limited in terms of opportunities. We were not able to have exchange of ideas in terms of we're not allowed to do a lot of fellowship because in our country that's they really focus on science and technology, but in terms
Mm,
of this general education like our profession in student affairs services, opportunities are very limited. Aside from the grants, aside from the on how you can really expand your knowledge and experience. But since you're dealing with student reference services, we Filipino practitioners can also contribute to really deepen and even expand the knowledge in terms of practices and even the development of theories. But since student affairs has not been given any importance, equal importance, unlike in the North, wherein you can definitely publish your research. In our organization in the Philippines, in my personal experience, when I conceptualized the research, when I wrote the research in terms of certified organization advisors of the Philippines, I think this kind of program for the continuous development of advisors, campus advisors, is not being given an importance coming from our Commission on Education. So that's one of the major limitations wherein we were always set aside because student affairs and services somehow uh, is not a top priority of university, especially
mhm.
when we deal abroad, when we deal with other colleagues through these organizations. Thank you,
Yeah.
Ib.
Thank you so much. Majla, maybe 30 seconds, and then, we'll move on to, oh, wonderful. Okay. All right. So, that question has, oh, I'm sorry, I saw a hand. Are we good?
No, no, no. You're good.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So, thank you all so much. Of course, many limitations, right? But something that Paulina said that really stood out to me, you had mentioned this deficit discourse, right? Where obviously one of the major issues that we've seen in when it comes to global south research is this epistemological hegemony, right, of the global north, and where a lot of ways of knowing, right, within the global south is not amplified, is not recognized, right? So, and this leads me to my next question. So, in what ways do historical and geopolitical power dynamics shape what is recognized as legitimate knowledge? Sorry, this question is a little bit convoluted, so bear with me. And what does it mean to own knowledge, right? Who has the power to create and reproduce them? In other words, who decides what counts as credible research? And how do you think this affects citation, publication, funding, and so on and so forth?
Okay. Oh, great. Paulina. That's it. Okay.
Oh, sorry, Patrick, if you want, you can start as we've been doing this kind of round.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe I just simply say that I just give a very general perspective and then we'll move on. And the first thing I want to say is that knowledge is universal,
Mm,
very, very universal. Productive knowledge will always find its users. However, history and geopolitical dynamics have made it possible, in fact, even inevitable, that the world should have the current knowledge that we are using, and we have all found it very useful. The world has been profiting from the current knowledge that we have. So I'm just trying to question this whole idea of legitimate knowledge, because the knowledge that is not legitimate will just simply will not even find usefulness anywhere, that kind of thing. So you don't even have to fight to say that your knowledge is legitimate. If it is legitimate, it should be fine. For example, the very innovative ways that people have used to give climate solutions, from the global south, and all of that kind of thing. Of course, you see, we just need to, it's not something that we can discuss in a small, limited time like this. So I think all knowledge is legitimate. And I also think that everyone decides that legitimate knowledge is legitimate knowledge because it's the system that has instituted legitimate knowledge also has a method for questioning what is legitimate in that knowledge. I mean, you have something like literature review, that kind of thing. So you just go, you review the literature and all of that kind of thing. And then you just say, well, what you consider legitimate knowledge has this deficiency. That's why I am coming in with this knowledge, new type of knowledge. And the moment you're able to question it successfully, it also becomes legitimate knowledge. So I think we should think about the use of the term legitimate because it is the usefulness of the knowledge that makes it legitimate. Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say that we are mainly inserted in a global dynamic. Even though we are from global south universities or universities, in my case, located in Chile, we are part of a global system, and therefore we are measured by global indicators, and
Yeah.
therefore we have to try to put out our knowledge within indexed journals. I don't know if this is the case for all of my other colleagues, but we are measured by those index metrics, and that's also part of the law of the Ministry of Science and Technology. So we're kind of, in a way, forced to adapt all of what we do to journals that are produced in the North that are mainly the ones that are indexed in Q1 or Q2. And there I would like to say that what makes that difficult is that when we talk about knowledge that is actually produced or based on theory that is inserted in our Southern institutions, specifically when we think about indigenous knowledge or about decentering those voices of peoples on the territories, it is hard to actually be able to validate that kind of knowledge within these scientific journals that obviously have other forms of metrics. And therefore, I think that there is a need for us, in a way, to stand up to talk about these needs of other ways of knowing and seeing and doing, and trying to bring in to the global discussion what we produce within our territories.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bayezid and then Majla, and we move on to the next question. Bayezid.
Yeah, thanks. I want to Can you hear me?
Yes, yes,
Yes,
No.
yes.
perfectly.
Okay,
Mhm.
great. So I want to actually continue from what my colleagues just mentioned regarding the legitimacy of the knowledge. So from my experience, I feel like the Global South scholars who are in the process of producing new knowledge, they actually rely heavily on the Global North theories, frameworks, or these sort of things. And often we borrow those things that maybe were not developed considering our own contexts. But we have to rely on those, we have to borrow those, and maybe we need to connect those things in our current research practices. So that is one thing. Secondly, I think there are Global South scholars. Sometimes they feel hesitant to cite the regional um, journal articles. Just thinking in case whether it will reduce the credibility or something else, because there are some confusions whether those journals follow the actual rigorous process in publishing those articles or not, or this sort of thing. So there is this sort of confusions. So for me, I mean, the issue is not like Global South cannot produce the quality publications. Definitely, there are predatory journals, but it is not like the inter quality knowledge is missing in the Global South. We need to just recognize it. So the issue is not just the absence of quality of scholarship in the Global South, but it is getting like how it is getting the recognition, or whether it is funded, or whether it is visible internationally. So that's the main thing we need to focus on. Thank you.
Thank you. Majla.
Yeah, I just like briefly want to, I agree with all my colleagues just said, and I would just to mention that regarding the journals and index and ranking, reviewers should distinguish between the weak relevance, and familiar context, because this is really, it's an important. So sometimes like the strong local research should not be dismissed simply because it comes from a region less represented in the literature. And this is what I have faced in my dissertation, because, sometimes people in the north, they are not familiar with our literature like what we are familiar with. So that's what I have to add. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, these are all wonderful, and valid points. And again, just so that our audience is following along, I want to rephrase what I heard. I heard Patrick starting by helping us understand that productive knowledge will always find its way, right? It'll always find its users, regardless of where it is produced. However, in the course of the conversation, I've also heard certain types of limitations, right? That perhaps make it difficult for these productive knowledge to be utilized, right? So I'm hearing, the fact that, a lot of times many of these articles or research are being evaluated using global metrics, using global dynamics, which then make it difficult sometimes, for them to be known or seen in places that will sort of, help them be amplified, especially when it comes to the indigenous ways of knowing. Again, given the fact that these are very specific, these are very peculiar, right? And in fact, it could be a way of standing up, right, against this epistemological ways of knowing, understanding of the Western expectations. So, I am hearing that there are ways in which we could potentially, right, understand our knowledge, and, making them, globally, making the global understanding, oh, I'm sorry, finding a global understanding and awareness, for the work that is being done in the Global South. All right. So there's a question in the chat. which I am going to ask. However, before I do that, my next question for the panelists says that research shows that a disproportionate share of index journals are based in Europe and North America, right? Shaping whose knowledge is visible. I think we've sort of, alluded to that earlier. So I have two-part questions to this. How does this affect research agenda and careers? And secondly, what strategies have you or other scholars used in navigating these barriers? And the question that we have in the question and answer, sort of speaks to this. And Patrick, that question was specifically to you. The audience wants to know the most significant invisible institutional barriers that you face. I think one of the questions that you were answering earlier, when trying to publish in journals that are traditionally dominated by global North standards. So similar questions here, but obviously open to everyone to answer.
So do we start by answering the question, or we go to your question first?
There are similar questions, so feel free to answer whichever one you or however way you deem fit.
Okay, so it's the most invisible barrier. You see, it's very easy to just sit back and think of an invisible barrier, that kind of thing. But I might be wrong, yes, in many cases, but I have seen that in the global north journals, they are completely dependent on how productive they are. And the editors of those journals are always on the waiting. I mean, they're always out there waiting to see, what the people are bringing in, to their journal that is new, So I have seen them make very serious effort, to push you to the limit, that kind of thing, so that they get your ideas published. So if you send in your papers, they just simply look at it, and if it is not worth it, you just simply they dismiss it. But if it has got something promising, then you see them. That's why it could take up to about 3 or 4 years for a paper you have written, to be finally accepted. So I don't think that because I'm from the global south, that an article or so, an idea that I sent in would necessarily be rejected, that kind of thing. But I don't think there is any political system where they just simply distinguish between scholars from the global south and the global north before deciding on what to, it depends on what you present to them. And I've seen them push you really hard, to just simply to develop the capacity to get published in those journals. That's the point. All right.
Marlon?
I'll go direct to the point with the first question raised by Dr. Mary Ann. Since most of these index journals are really based in Europe and even North America, definitely researchers are often pressured to align studies with international trends instead of more contextualized or even local community needs. And I believe one of the most important challenges is it affects academic careers of these researchers because promotions, funding, and even recognition frequently depend on publications in foreign index journals. In a more specific examples, most of the articles are really foreign index coming from foreign journals. And the questions also given by Doc Mary Ann, what strategies? I believe this is really in terms of most of the researchers collaborate with other researchers to really produce new knowledge in a specific field. Thank you, Eve.
Thank you so much, Marlon. Bayasad?
Yeah, so there is a clear dominance in the research and index journals, particularly in the North America or in the Europe region. And if you're a global South scholar and if you want to focus on a more contextualized pressing issue, then there may be a chance that your work might not get the targeted audience or that much level in comparison to the global North scholars' works. So I also feel like scholars from global South, they constantly negotiate between producing meaningful or contextually relevant research and the work that is globally recognized, these sort of expectations from their institutional and personal. And so they actually negotiate constantly between these things. Another thing is the major challenge I see that to make your work more visible is one of the major barriers is the APC, the article processing charge, which is sometimes way too higher, and that is not even affordable to most of the global South scholars. I know that there are some journals who offer some sort of waiver for the global South scholars, but unfortunately, not all the countries are included there. So this is another major barriers, and I really hope that the list of that global South countries should be expanded because we need knowledge from every part of the world. So why should I just focusing on the globally trending topics, whereas my education system, as an educational researcher, there are lots of things I need to focus on to address, to know more, to explore this stuff. So I think there should be a balance, and the global north can do a lot of things so that the knowledge from other parts, particularly from the global south, become more visible in the academia. Thanks.
Thank you, Baisa. Before I go to Patrick, I want, if you are able to, or if anybody else is able to, you had mentioned the processing fee, right? That is tied to making a journal free. Is that something that you could speak a little bit more about? Um, so for example, right, you had mentioned that not a lot of, perhaps many within the global south may not be able to afford it. I think it may be helpful for our audience to have a better understanding of maybe how much, right, that typically cost. And I think even maybe converting that to a yearly or monthly salary or typical, right, yearly monthly salary in your own context, just to, again, right, ground this
Yeah.
conversation.
Sure, sure. The typical APC article processing charge in reputed outlets can vary from $3,000 to 4,000 or in between. So if I compare this figure in our country context, in our country, the lecturers who work in public universities, they get not more than um, $300 per month. So this is the actual salary of the newly joined lecturers or early career faculty members in public universities in Bangladesh. So how come they afford that $3,000 to $4,000 APC rate just for one publication to make it open for all? So that is something we need to focus on, and we need to initiate discussions how to mitigate this, because this is something impossible. That is the salary of for years that just one journal's cost. So that's the comparison. Thank you.
Thank you, Baisa. Patrick, please.
Okay, I just tell a very small short story within 1 minute to illustrate the fact that you don't need to even pay money, if to get yourself published. I recall a friend of mine who, at the time when the the war between the US and Iraq was taking place, and everything was about Saddam Hussein and biological weapons and all of that. And he went to the field to do something. And then people started to tell him that, look, our enemies could not defeat us because of this leaf, this leaf, this leaf, that kind of thing. That they used it to produce poisonous arrows, that kind of thing. And so he just simply plucked those leaves and took them to the lab. He's a historian. Took them to the lab and said, can you just simply assess the amount of poison that is here and here and here and give me the percentage? They did it at the lab and gave it to him. And then he put it together and published an article titled Biological Warfare in Pre-Colonial Africa. I don't know if you understand what I mean. At a time when people were talking of technological warfare and biological, so he just talked about biological warfare in pre-colonial Africa. Of course, the article was instantly snatched up, by the journal. And when it was published, it opened up opportunities for him all over the world. Here is someone who was just simply, stating the fact that there was already biological warfare somewhere there. So I'm thinking, I saw a question here in the chat. It says, you should make your topic relevant. I think people are just interested in producing knowledge, sorry, what do they call it? Index cutting or whatever, something, cutting edge knowledge, that kind of thing. So that's why we always have these things about literature review. I don't really think maybe the institutions can pay for these things, but everything that we're talking about here today has to do with resource allocation. In the global south, we hardly have money for these things. But one thing we have to understand again is that we have not had the patience in the global south to cultivate a journal conscientiously to the point where we can make it acceptable, that kind of thing. Acceptable to the global community. You need to build, you need capacity, to build this journal up, to train people and all of that kind of thing. Maybe because we're too much in a hurry to get promotion and all of these things. So we don't usually have the patience to do this thing. Maybe we should begin to think about how we can be patient enough to build our journals, to the point where you can receive article also from the global north. Thank you.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing you say that is that the opportunities are there,
Yeah.
right? Ensuring that the work is quality work,
Mhm.
opens doors of opportunity.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to ground the conversation in the realities, right, of many, within the global south, where finances, as you'd mentioned, right, the
Yeah.
resources, right,
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
capacity is currently not there to be able to, you know, um, promote even sometimes that, the quality work that is being done. So I think it's a multifaceted, issue and approach, right, to how we can continue to make sure that, good work is being
Yeah.
promoted, and being amplified in the global south. I will quickly read Najla's response. Najla said, just wanted to add that researchers may choose topics that fit international journals rather than what is most urgent for their communities. Scholars from underrepresented regions may also spend extra time explaining context, finding suitable journals, paying publication fees, or seeking international co-authors.
Mhm.
Angela, are you in a space where you're able to speak a little bit more to this, or?
Yeah, I just like want to add this in like from my own experience. I have done a research in from 2000 to 22 until now in US. I faced a lot of barriers to publish this work.
Mhm.
First, it's the context. It's completely regarding my home country, my people in my home country, the urgent issues they are facing, and the second, the fully participants, also from my home country. So, explaining this to reviewer and explaining the context, even
Mm.
if the literature review it's not enough to them because it's hard to spend or waste the time to find enough literature to explain like let's say an issue or an issue faced by community in a specific time, and you want to catch up this issue, and you're gonna stop by this regulations and this regarding the journals. It's kind of
Yeah.
disappointed, and I'm just like want to shed the light on this point since it's my own experience.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I think this takes us back to what Paulina was, talking about earlier, about the need for, you know, um, promoting indigenous knowledge. And what I'm hearing you say, Angela, is that you typically run into difficulties when you're focusing on a particular region. So in a way, you sort of have to you have to broaden, right, your
Yes.
research in a way that speaks to perhaps
Yes.
something that you may not want it to speak to, right? Because,
Yeah. Yeah.
limiting
Yeah.
it to your
So,
interest, to
yeah.
your region, to your local context
Yeah.
limits you in being able to have that, opportunity for not promotion, but opportunity for publication.
Yeah, sometimes even if the participant in the US, but they are
Hmm.
international and they
Hmm.
discuss the a different context than
Yeah.
the North,
Northern,
yeah,
Western.
is it still difficulties to
Yeah.
publish or to work on this?
Yeah. Paulina, 30 seconds and then we
Yeah,
move on to the
just wanted to say that sometimes also journals or research do not fit the topics of the journals. So
Mm,
that's sometimes hard to actually find journals that are interested in different topics. I'm not talking about my area, but in general, like
in
Latin
general.
American knowledge
Mhm.
produced in institutions. And the other thing today is the high demand. There is extremely like a very high need for people to publish, and therefore it takes very long time to be reviewed or even to be accepted. And then again, all of the comments that come from the reviewers, and again, I'm adding this issue of language that we have in Latin America, which is also like very big. So apart from if you were to have to pay for your journal, you also have to pay for an editor because obviously it comes with a lot of misspellings and
Yeah,
language problems.
sure, sure, exactly. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. I think this is a good segue to our next question, because what I'm hearing is that there are certain limitations, right, that help promote the ability to, publish in this journals, in this Western journals. And somebody had mentioned um, something along the lines of collaboration, right? I think it was maybe Bayesed or Marlon who had mentioned collaboration, right, with Western partners. So within that context, what recurring issues arise in partnerships between Global North and Global South? How are decisions made, and who are the decision makers, in those partnership opportunities? If anyone is able to speak to that.
Okay. Well, since nobody's speaking, it looks like I have colonized this space, that kind of thing. I hope I haven't, that kind of thing.
You're doing great.
You see, when it talks about, when we talk about equitable partnership or the kind of thing, it's only in principle. It can never be in practice because of all the things we've been discussing here, resource allocation and capacity. You know, it's not possible to just simply dredge out your activist strength, and then impose it on a well-formulated system of knowledge production that already exists. And then we mentioned maybe our geographical location, and then insist that certain things should be like this and that, that kind of thing. But I think the people who are funding research and then inviting collaborators, because we in the global south, we have to return back to those terminologies again. We in the global south, we hardly have the resources to put down and then invite people from the global north to collaborate with us. So when they invite us to collaborate with them, and then this money that they've got from research institutions such as the European Research Council or from the US Agency for International Development, there are already agendas that are set, and these things come down with very well laid down principle. Who is principal investigator? Who is this? Who is that? All of these things, you just simply nullify the whole idea of equitability, kind of thing. So you just simply have to fit into the research agenda, that kind of thing. So I mean, equitable principle, examine it just exists in principle, it's not in practice, so you have to find a way to fix yourself in there. But if out of ideological difference you are not able to fit in, then you have to opt out. But yeah, the system just there has to be synergy. Yes, synergy, because as I said, knowledge is universal. Thank you. rather than take the whole space.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Marlon?
Hi. For me, I really want to somehow tweak the question in terms of promoting genuine collaboration.
Mm.
I think the
Mm.
question means about that. And someone was been in IASAS and attending conferences and presenting in conferences in terms of student reference services. I believe everyone has an opportunity to share what they really experience and know.
Mhm.
Because in my observations, being in working with fellow colleagues in the global north, I think there's an equal in terms of decision making.
Mm.
Most of the topics and most of the discussions are really based from the global north. And even the extractive data collection,
Mhm.
they really want to focus on their
Yeah,
own
like that.
yes, in terms of data collections, imbalanced authorships, and even funding control, which is we've been discussing this. Very unfortunate if we really want to promote collaboration, the global south turn to be or researchers turn to become implementers rather
Mm.
than equal knowledge producers.
Mm.
So I believe
Mm.
really have to address those concerns if we really want to promote genuine collaboration in
Mm.
research production. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marlon. Bayasid?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what my colleagues just mentioned. But I have a different perspective as well in terms of my very little personal experience in collaborating with the Global North scholars. So, what I've seen, I mean, my personal experience was amazing, to be very honest, because I mean, when I initiated the process and when I reached out to them, they gladly accepted my invitation, and they actually pushed me to lead the project because it was mine and I initiated this. So I had an amazing experience. And one thing that I really want to acknowledge that I was treated very well. And it was connection and relationship between mutual respect and trust, which is very much
Mm.
important in such collaboration. At the same time, I'd also like to highlight one more thing, that there are some opportunities provided by different organizations for the Global South scholars. But as I have mentioned earlier, that there are some listed countries. And in the Global South, I mean, in every year or two or three, there are countries who have been graduated from the lower middle income to the middle income countries. And then those countries have been excluded from different opportunities. But those countries, though, are not included in the global north immediately. So
Mm.
where are those countries are situated? Because they are not getting the opportunities once they are supposed to achieve, but still they remain the global south nations,
Yeah.
and they are losing the opportunities. So in terms of partnership, I think we need to consider that the income level, and sometimes those income level and those figures and stats, sometimes many governments in the global south, they fabricate those things to just showcase their advancement in terms of the political landscape. So there are lots of things to actually focus on, but I would like to highlight this point. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Paulina?
Yeah, and I want to grab onto that last idea because we are one of those graduated countries,
Yes.
and and that has reduced a lot of our research
Mm.
funding from external organizations. And most of the funding that we have in Chile actually depends on short cycle grants. And therefore, we try to connect and partner with other researchers and colleagues from other, well, specifically from the Global North, in order to be able to access to grants and to funding for research. We are even in a higher problem today in Chile because, well, our research investment is 0.4%,
Mm.
and apparently now it's going to be even lowered. We had a declaration from our president saying that access, like university funding for research, must be researched and looked very well in detail, because apparently everything just ends up in a book, which ends
Mhm.
up in a library. So that's the thought of what research is for our government today, and that is very sad. And also our scholarships for international for going out abroad have also been reduced and cut completely. So that limits also our possibilities of connecting, of making networks, of joining colleagues from other parts of the world, and even complementing our knowledge. And the last thing is that we mostly the partnerships that universities in Chile do, and this is part of my research, is in order to access to advanced equipment. And therefore, that is one of the major forms in which partnerships are looked for in order to access to that advanced equipment, but also to large data sets and also to maybe to knowledge that is not produced and that needs to be complemented within our institutions.
Well, excuse me, there's so much to unpack from from this one conversation. I think I see Najla
Yes, I
on mute.
just want
Yes,
to
Najla,
add
please
a
go ahead.
very quick sentence, just from our perspectives,
Mhm.
with me and my colleagues. I want to just say that both sides they have to bring expertise and value, not just access.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
that's right.
absolutely.
Right. That's right.
So, I think this, so I'm going to ask my second question. Given all of the um, valid points that have been made, across the board, excuse me, where while the global South may not have the resources, there's something that it's bringing to the table, right? It's bringing knowledge, right? It's bringing, it's expertise, to the table. And while the global north has the resources, to conduct the research and ensure, its success, there are ways in which that partnership could be more equitable. So, my question to you is, what does an equitable research partnership look like in practice? Right? Not theoretically, but in practice, because I think a lot of you, and I appreciated those who had indicated having worked with, researchers from the global north and having had, an equitable relationship. I want to hear a little bit more about that, about your experience, but also, what other things can be done to ensure equitability, right? When it comes to partnership between, Global South and Global North. Geographically, I know there's a lot of issues with, with that terminology and the definition of that, but, within our context and within this conversation, what are some of the ways in which we could sort of breach the gap, right, and ensure a level of equitable partnership?
Go first.
Yes, please.
Okay. So for me, an equitable partnership means something that is co-creating. So in terms of research, let's say if I have a research partner from the global north, we should co-create the research questions, co-create the research direction, what things we will focus on. So let's have discussion, or I mean the shared perspectives. It is very important. Another thing is this equitable partnership also means being transparent in terms of communication, in terms of distributing the work, in terms of the authorship and others. Also, mutual respect and trust is important, because being situated in the global south, sometimes scholars, they have a feeling like the imposter or self-doubt that also actually hamper the whole process. And on that time, if the global north scholars, they stand beside them and they guide them like a senior scholar, then maybe there would be a space where the global south scholars can really flourish themselves. And I also think like to mitigate this issue, the global north, they should acknowledge the fact that global south comes with their contextual knowledge, understanding, and experiences, and these must be recognized. So this is some, because everyone has something to offer. If a date clock can, even a date clock can provide two correct times in a day, so nothing is valueless. So everyone's something to offer, and we need to recognize this. So it can be a place of mutual learning from both of the ends. So that's my take on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Right. Yes. Okay. I think just before you ask your question, Marlon has used the term genuine collaboration, that kind
Right,
of thing.
right. Genuine
Very
collaboration.
yes, yes, which is very beautiful. But of course, we have to recognize that the word genuine is a value word. You
Right.
determine what is genuine. Good. And of course, Bayard has also, Bayezid has also just spoken about co-creation. All of this leads us to one point, the practice of equitable collaboration, not the principle of it.
Exactly.
And good. The practice is just simply that you cannot collaborate with someone with whom you do not have what you might call a genuine relationship or with whom you cannot co-create, kind of thing. You frame the principles of research and all of that kind of thing. And that means networking for over a long period of time. I have had the rare privilege of working with people in the global north, and of course, I think somebody has used the word extractive data here, that kind of thing. I don't remember who now. Uh, so, uh, you see, it's because the data is available at the other side, and then the funding is available here and all of that. So you just simply network together, you sit down and all of that. And when it is like that, it is always full of respect, so long as you in the global south is available, that kind of thing. And then you have a wonderful working relationship. It is not when they send an email to you today and then it takes you like 3 weeks to respond, that kind of thing. And then when they complain, you just simply say, our system here is very bad, that kind of thing. That's the more reason why you cannot collaborate practically and equitably. So I think we should look at our own systems in the global south, and then decide how to transcend it, in order to have that genuine collaboration for co-creation that will lead to addition to global knowledge. That's my
Mm,
take on this.
yeah. So I want to unpack that a little bit, and Marlon and Najla, I'll get to you really shortly. So what I'm hearing you say is that the system is not perfect,
Yeah.
right? Because of the disparities in
Mhm.
resources and capacity and so on
Yeah.
and so forth.
Mhm.
However, we from the global south also have certain things that we can do to
Yes.
better
Yeah.
that relationship, to
Exactly.
better that collaboration,
Yes.
such as
Yeah.
making ourselves available, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Doing quality work,
Exactly.
ensuring that we build a cordial
Yeah.
working relationship
Exactly.
across
Exactly.
across those that we're partnering with.
Yeah.
So these are some of the values that we are bringing
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
table. While we
Exactly.
may not have the resources, the capacity, and so on and so forth, we're bringing the work ethics, right? We could bring the work ethics. We could
Exactly.
bring the data collection and so on and so forth to sort of, leveling the playing field
And
across.
we should bring in the capacity for thinking. And I'll give you one simple, one sentence illustration. Someone approaches from the global north, approaches someone from the global south. I say, let's collaborate. Let's try to see if we can do this. He say, okay. The person from the global south replies, okay, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. That kind of thing. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I mean, there's something on the table. Are you not going to start thinking of how to bring in your own contribution to it? You want to be directed on what to do? You know, that's what I mean when I say make yourself available critically and
Mhm.
also practically. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I think it's important to highlight the fact that while that may be
Yeah,
the reality in
yeah,
some contexts, right, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the reality in other
yeah,
contexts, even within the
yeah,
global south. So
yeah,
I'd like to hear
yeah,
some
yeah.
other thoughts as this pertains to your own context. Again, we're
That's
represented
my own
here across.
context. That's my own
Exactly,
context. Exactly.
exactly
That's
right.
my
So
context.
within your context, I'm interested, in hearing Langela, for example. Please.
Yeah, I just want to add that practically, it should also respect, let's say, or trust the local language uh,
Mm,
communities, community inputs, or the qualitative interpretation, since I'm a qualitative methodologist. So, as a real, let's say, as a real contributions. For my opinion, the equity, it means shared leadership, shared credits, and also shared benefits. So this is what we are looking for.
thank you, Najla. There was a question that was asked. Oh, Paulina.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that finding your value. I think because at
Mm,
the end, when we start partnerships and collaborations, we all have different interests and we all have different values.
mm,
And sometimes, again, from this deficit discourse, sometimes it's hard to actually identify what that value or singularity is.
mm,
And I think that at least from universities that are regional universities, where we have like a lab, a natural lab surrounding us, where we are experts on those areas, that is where our value resides. And
mhm,
therefore, we can bring in new knowledge, new forms of research, and strength to what is being produced. But I think that that is something, and probably that's a colonial thought that we have, right? That when we connect with those from the centers, even like when we talk about the capitals from the regions,
mm,
or global north and global south, we don't put our value onto what we're doing, and we don't think that we are good enough. And that,
mm,
I think, is a mentality that we actually need to start changing. And probably
mm,
it's a colonial legacy, right?
mm.
Yeah, I
Thank you
agree
so
with you.
much. So, we're taking this all the way back, right, to the foundations of, even the delineation between the global south and the global north, right? There's a lot of colonial history here. There's a lot of dominance, right? Western dominance. And we're seeing that continuing, right, to trickle down, not just economically, but even in the way that we're experiencing and approaching, the work that we do and the research that is being produced. So I really I appreciate that reminder, right, of understanding the value that you bring to the table. You may not have the funding, you may not have the resources, right? You may not have the facilities and the labs to do the work, but the knowledge, the insight, right, the rigor, right, these are some of the things that can be brought to the table. And how do we leverage those things, in ensuring that we're building trust and accountability across the board. So thank you for that. um Here's my final question to you. Having had all of these conversations, we've sort of highlighted some of the difficulties, the challenges, and so on and so forth. What concrete changes are most urgently needed to decenter global research, right? If you could name one change that you would like to see in the next 5 years, what would it be? And what opportunities give you hope, even, in the context of this gloomy, right? Conversations that we've had. What are the things that give you hope, and what do you hope to see in the next 5 years, where when it comes to decentering global research? Mm. Biased.
I'd like to highlight two things. Number one is we need more collaborative platforms and more collaborative initiatives, like organizing conferences, symposiums, or research network led by the Global South institutions and scholars. focused on the regionally relevant issues. Another thing is I'd also advocate for greater Global South representation on the journal's editorial boards and
Mm.
review panels so that diverse perspectives can come through and they can actually uh, circulate some call for papers focused on the global south issues in different regions. So I would like to highlight these two from mine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Marlon?
For me, Eve, more than the technicalities of research, I believe this is a reminder for all global South researchers, especially from the context of our country. We have to do research for research
Mm.
because
Oh no. Did we lose Marlon?
what was really the main functions of
Marlon, we
research?
lost you for like 20 seconds. Can you please
Sorry.
repeat what you said? It's okay. You're back now.
Okay. Thank you. For me, more than the technicalities of research, for us to decenter, especially this is a call for all the researchers coming from the global south. We have to do research genuinely to solve a problem in our society.
Mm.
More than resource allocation, of course, in my personal perspective, in our context, most researchers just look for right research for what reason? I believe we have to go back to the root. You have to go back to the foundations. Why do we do research?
Mm.
And that's really we talk about values. When we talk about we really want to get respect from the global north, global south countries should really write research that will solve societal problems.
Mm.
That's for me.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any thoughts?
Okay, maybe I should just
Concrete.
jump in there.
Paulina, I think.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Paulina. I think Paulina had her hand up, and
Yeah,
then you,
Paulina, I'm
Patrick.
always taking your space. I think I should let you have it this time, please.
Yes,
Okay,
please.
I was just
Mm,
going to say that to consider our value. So this idea of considering ourselves valuable and
Mhm.
decentering a bit the logics of also research, knowledge, even languages. Because again, today with AI, it's actually even easier to communicate. So hopefully we can see in the upcoming years the possibilities of probably producing knowledge in our own languages, because obviously that way for us we communicate differently, right?
Mhm.
And this recognition of also of Southern constructed theory and knowledge.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
those aspects for me are relevant, but working on this idea of that we can also bring value to the table. I think that is one of the one of the biggest changes that we need to do within our societies, within our institutions, and a little bit of decolonizing our thoughts. Because again, we have to remember that our universities were northern imports
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm. Mhm.
From our there are also colonial legacies. So
mhm,
we have to also start producing change within them.
mhm.
Wonderful. Thank you
That's
so
it.
much. And yes, please.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, Paulina has said almost everything. I mean, I think she said everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to always have this recognition that the universities are colonial, which is
Mhm.
colonial import, which is why we are still somehow dependent on them. And at this point, I just want to say that when we use the term to decenter knowledge, we should not go back to the disparities between the global north and the global south. And in order to conclude simply that the way to decenter knowledge is to whittle it down, you
Mhm.
know, you don't bring it down. Sometimes people operate by just simply dragging when they don't understand something, they just drag it down to their own level, no matter, without even thinking that that level might just be it dragging it down. So the word that I've had used here, which is very crucial, is value. How do we decenter knowledge? By bringing value into it in order to
Mm.
be recognized, as, having brought value to this thing. That what this man is saying is really, I don't know how many times are you being cited, in Google Scholars and all of that kind of thing. So this is the point, that's how we can decenter knowledge, not
Yeah.
through activism, but through bringing genuine value to it.
Yeah.
So,
I'd like to ask a follow-up question, to that. When we're talking about, bringing value
mhm,
to an existing structure,
mhm,
however, that
mhm,
structure was never created with you in mind, right? The current structure has been developed
mhm.
to fit Western epistemological,
System.
system.
Okay.
So then, if within the context of the global South, if the ways of knowing, the ways of doing, the ways of operating does
Mhm.
not fit within that context, how do you bring yourself to bring in value in ways that does not, in ways that do not drag the value down to to the point that you're making?
Okay. You see, when you talk about value, it is something that, okay, let's put it this way, money chases value, that kind of thing. You know, you see, when something is valuable, it doesn't think about context, it doesn't think about structures, it doesn't think about whatever. You see, the whole idea is to improve the existing structure, you know. I- Your value, if it does not improve the existing structure, then it means that you have not brought value into it, that kind of thing. Because if you work, you can, the only way to subvert a system is to be inside that. First of all, find your way into that system. And when you have gone into the system, then you can subvert it, by increasing the value, If you don't have, that's why you see the car companies, the moment the new car comes out that is really very good, another company will just simply buy the car and then dismantle it to see what is there, that kind of thing. That's they are entering into that system, and one day I have to say, okay, how do we improve on this? How do we improve on this? And that is why, you see, that's why I say the knowledge production system itself has constituted a mechanism for you to question it through that mechanism of literature review. So when you've gone into that system and you look at the whole thing, it's okay, this system does not accommodate this, This system has not made provision for this. This one is deficient in terms of this, and this is how to improve it. And then you just simply come in there, that kind of thing. In that way, it's the traditional fight between tradition and modernity, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
because yes, the moment it comes in there, the people will recognize it, say, oh, this person has said this one, that's this. That's why.
Thank you. So just to paraphrase what you're saying, the structure exists.
Yeah.
However, for it to be adjusted, for it to
Yeah.
be made better,
Mhm.
you need to have a seat at the table, is what I'm
That's
hearing
the
you say,
point. That's the
right?
point.
So
Thank you.
how do
Thank you.
we
Yeah.
get a seat at the table to then begin to question
Yeah.
and,
Mhm.
demystify and perhaps even break down to reconstruct?
Mhm. That's it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Najla, 30 seconds. And
Yes, I just want to wrap up with all of what my colleagues said. I agree totally with them. And just what I hope to see is a stronger support for the regional journals and local research systems that value community perspectives, culture values, local knowledge, also regional research priorities.
yeah.
So that's all.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you to our attendees. There are two questions that I would like for us to go back to, and apologies because I missed this when it was initially asked, and it has to do with the publication and submission of publication. Maisa had asked, what do you think of the waiting time from submission to publication and the high rejection rates? So we're going to use the next 10 minutes or so to answer questions. Please, if you're in the audience and you have any questions, feel free to use the question and answer panel or use the chat to share your thoughts. So anybody wants to take that question?
Okay. So if you it talks about ownership. If you have sent your article to a journal and then it has been accepted to go for review, you know that that gives you hope, you know. I think that once it passes that review stage, you know, what everybody will just, or what you will expect is that they will expect, I mean, you will just start working on it. It can take 4 years, actually. It can take 4 years, you know, for this thing to come out, you know, depending on the journal. But if you want very quick publications, you just pay some predatory publishers elsewhere, just give them their fees, and then they will lump everything together. But if you really want quality citable article in a journal that is accessible to experts, you know, you have to wait. You have to wait. And you have to bring up the article to the standard, because the idea that your article or that your idea is wonderful, is good, you know, should give you I mean the energy to continue to work on it. I don't know if you understand. Even if it takes 4 or 5 years, it doesn't matter. You can start another project, you know. That's it.
So what I'm hearing you say is that the waiting time may be worth
Doesn't matter.
it, depending on depending on whether or not you want quality
Yeah,
over
exactly.
quantity in
Exactly.
some cases. Any other thoughts from our panelists? Okay.
Okay.
Oh yes, Bayezid.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to highlight another perspective that is, yes, the waiting time is pretty long, particularly if you want to publish in reputed outlets. But at the same time, we also need to consider that those reviewers or the editors, uh, they actually do it as part of their additional responsibilities apart from their regular tasks. So that is one thing that we also need to consider. And in most cases, they are not getting paid for this. So it is their, I mean, sole contribution to the literature or to the field or to the areas that they really care about. So definitely we need to consider this. But yes, I do agree that it feels sometimes pretty much frustrating, that waiting time, because in good journals, maybe it would take nearly 2 years or 1.5 years to get it published, your work. But I think, I mean, it will be worth it if it gets published finally. And meanwhile, I mean, maybe you can focus on other projects so that you cannot just spare your time for just waiting for that publishing results. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that insight.
I just want to mention what
Yes.
Polina just mentioned before, that the scope of the journal sometimes it's different than what you submit. So
Mhm.
even if it's take time and it's end with the rejection, unfortunately, sometimes because the scope of the journal, and it's not like be easy to recognize that from the beginning.
Mm, mm. Thank you. Wonderful. The other question that we have, and Malone has begun the good work of answering this. So it says, for anyone, just a general question. Are there instances where any of your research findings directly influenced local policy or community well-being in a way that an academic paper never could? If any, can you share? So have there been instances where your research findings have directly impacted, policy or the community, in ways that you would like to share? Marlon.
Just like what I shared as my answer, I'm part of a 45-year-old organization in the field of campus advising. And in 2023, through my paper in a graduate school, we were able to come up with we call it certification. So this is in the area of professional development. We believe this is the first time in the Philippines that we certify campus organization advisors. It's never been done by any professional organizations in terms of continuing development. And happily speaking, our Commission on Education also highlighted this kind of uh, micro credentials, the importance of micro credentials. So somehow it's very timely, and importantly, it became an advantage to the organization to have this kind of certification. We were able to come up with extensive modules, and these topics are not usually being discussed. For example, just like to share with the team, with the group, uh, the responsibilities, the legal responsibilities of campus organization advisors. Most of the participants were surprised. They have a lot of legal responsibilities. They thought they will just advise, they will just guide, but there are legal implications being an advisor.
Mhm, mhm.
In that sense, that very simple paper turned to be very helpful into practice from the theory itself, and it really helped the most needed group, which is the campus organization advisors in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marlon, for sharing. Great work and great effort, on your end, and that's really amazing that you were able to make this change, for academic advising, in the Philippines. Thank you, Najla.
I just wanna just very quick shared my academic work in my dissertation. In my dissertation, I've done a qualitative research, let's say a grounded theory approach. I have created a model specifically for Saudi students. And it was this theoretical framework. It's for an emotional, a social emotional well-being of Saudi students. They are continuing their higher education in US. So I intended in this work to create a model specifically for those community, because most of the health behaviors that I have been learned in my PhD, it was created from the Western lens. So it's not like, let's say, if we want to use it for our community, it will not work. I mean, especially the specific constructs that the theories have. So in this academic work, I've actually created this model to apply on my communities to help them or to see the benefits in the future. And even for those people that are want to continue the studies using the quantitative or using the mixed method, they will have a solid work actually to and a rational, let's say, a rational opinion regarding our social emotional well-being as a Saudi student.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm going to read a response that we received from one of our attendees as it pertains to the question of submission and publication. It says time from submission to publication can be anything from 3 months to 18 months or more. Rejection rate depends on how many submissions the editors receive and the quality of the submission. Some journals have an acceptance rate of 5 to 10%. Journals such as JSAA, which is a journal for student affairs in Africa, has an acceptance rate of 37%. That means 2/3 are rejected due to having a backlog, struggling to find peer reviewers, right? Submission are out of scope, right? Some of the things that we've talked about today, or poor quality, or perhaps a topic that is not attractive. Often it is methodological challenges. Authors should understand, these complexities and be comfortable with rejection. It's part of getting published. So, to the point that was being made earlier, there are going to be times where, articles are rejected or accepted. It is part of the growth process. And there are multiple, from my understanding of this text, is that the process is multifaceted. There are multiple things, right, that are being factored into the process of journal submission and acceptance. And this concludes our conversation for today. I just want to thank you all for your time and your effort. I hope that, our audience have learned one or two things today, and thank you for the engaging questions. But, I will pass it on to Mary Ann to close us out.
Thank you all, and thank you all for joining us today. This was great. I'm so excited to be a part of this and to have everyone come to join us. Just in case you would like to continue on the fun, we are going to go back and do our qualitative research webinar series again this summer. It will be running through June and July. We'll have more information on that coming soon. Please join us. We have some new material to bring and some new fresh speakers as well. Just a quick reminder of some things coming up in July for the Student Leader Global Summit. Our summit as well in Toronto, Canada in October, and I do believe they've extended the submissions for this. So if you're interested, please check it out. Also, we have some awards that are available, and we hope that you'll think about nominating yourself or someone you know for one of our awards. Advancing Global Literature, Inclusivity, Diversity, Inclusion, Resilience. Also the Robert Shea IASIS Leadership Award, Roger Ludman Award for Service, and then of course the IASIS Global Award for Internationalization and Professionalization as well. We would love to have you as part of our global consortium so we can connect researchers in different spaces so that we can create those collaborations with an equitable process. And then if you are interested in joining IASIS and you're not a member yet, please check out the different ways in which you can become either an organizational partner, a global professional member, or an observant member with us. If you have any questions, my name is Mary Ann, and Eve is right here with us as well. And let me just say, she's amazing to work with. So please feel free to reach out to either one of us because we would love to work with you more. And thank you again to our amazing panel today. I appreciate all of you for being here and doing this. And thank you to Eve for moderating so that we could keep this completely global.
Thank you all so much. It was great to engage with you. And
yeah,
Right.
we will close there.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
all.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank
Hello,
you.
colleagues. Thank you.
Yes.